Welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave first full castle recording of the first book in George R.R. Martin's Dunk and Egg series, The Hedge Knight. I'm Paul, Sir General on the forums, and I'm going to be the narrator for this evening, and unfortunately I will also be the one to edit it. Just a quick reminder that in the after show, there will be spoilers for A Song of Ice and Fire, as well as Star Wars, I believe. There is a lot of Star Wars. So sit back and relax and enjoy The Hedge Knight. The spring rains had softened the ground, so Dunk had no trouble digging the grave. He chose a spot on the western slope of a low hill, for the old man had always loved to watch the sunset.
Another day done, and who knows what the morrow will bring us, eh, Dunk?
Well, one morrow had brought rains that soaked them to the bones, and one after that had brought wet gusty winds, and the next a chill. By the fourth day the old man was too weak to ride. Now he was gone. Only a few days past he had been singing as they rode, the old song about going to Gulltown to see a fair maid. But instead of Gulltown, he'd sung of Ashford.
Off to Ashford to see the fair maid. Hi-ho, hi-ho.
Dunk thought miserably as he dug. When the hole was deep enough, he lifted the old man's body in his arms and carried him there. He had been a small man and slim. Stripped of hauberk, helm, and sword belt, he seemed to weigh no more than a bag of leaves. Dunk was hugely tall for his age, a shambling, shaggy, big-boned boy of 16 or 17 years, no one was quite certain which, who stood closer to 7 feet than to 6, and had only just begun to fill out his frame. The old man had often praised his strength. He had always been generous in his praise. It was all he had to give. He laid him out in the bottom of the grave, and stood over him for a time. The smell of rain was in the air again, and he knew he ought to fill the hole before the rain broke. But it was hard to throw dirt down on that tired old face.
There ought to be a septon here, to say some prayers over him, but he only has me.
The old man had taught Dunk all he knew of swords and shields and lances, but had never been much good at teaching him words.
I'd leave your sword, but it would rust in the ground. The gods will give you a new one, I guess. I wish you didn't die, sir.
He paused, uncertain what else needed to be said. He didn't know any prayers, not all the way through. The old man had never been much for praying.
You were a true knight, and you never beat me when I didn't deserve it. Except for that one time in Maidenpool. It was the inn boy who ate the widow woman's pie, not me. I told you. It don't matter now. The gods keep you, sir.
He kicked dirt in the hole, then began to fill it methodically, never looking at the thing at the bottom.
He had a long life. He must have been closer to 60 than 50. And how many men can say that?
At least he had lived to see another spring. The sun was westering as he fed the horses. There were 3, his sway-backed stot, the old man's palfrey, and Thunder, his war-horse, who was ridden only in tourney and battle. The big brown stallion was not as swift or strong as he had once been, but he still had his bright eye and fierce spirit, and he was more valuable than anything else Dunk owned.
If I sold Thunder, and old Chestnut, and the saddles and the bridles too, I'd come away with enough silver to...
Dunk frowned. The only life he knew was the life of Hedge Knight, riding from keep to keep, taking service with this lord and that lord, fighting in their battles and eating in their halls until the war was done, then moving on. There were tourneys from time to time as well, though less often, and he knew that some Hedge Knights turned robber during the lean winters, though the old man never had.
I could find another Hedge Knight in need of a squire to tend his animals and clean his mail. Or might be I could go to some city, to Lannisport or King's Landing, to join the city watch, or else...
He had piled the old man's things under The cloth purse contained 3 silver stags, 19 copper pennies, and a chipped garnet. As with most hedge knights, the greatest part of his worldly wealth had been tied up in his horses and weapons. Dunk now owned a chainmail hauberk that he had scoured the rust off 1,000 times, an iron half-helm with a broad nasal and a dent on the left temple, a sword belt of cracked brown leather, and a long sword in a wood and leather scabbard, a dagger, a razor, a whetstone, greaves and gorget, an 8-foot war lance of turned ash, topped by a cruel iron point, and an oaken shield with a scarred metal rim, bearing the sigil of Sir Arlan of Pennytree, a winged chalice, silver on brown. Dunk looked at the shield, scooped up the sword belt, and looked at the shield again. The belt was made for the old man's skinny hips. It would never do for him, no more than the hauberk would. He tied the scabbard to a length of hempen rope, knotted it around his waist, and drew the long sword. The blade was straight and heavy, good castle-forged steel. The grip, soft leather, wrapped over wood. The pommel, a smooth, polished black stone. Wet as it was, the sword felt good in his hand, and Dunk knew how sharp it was, having worked it with whetstone and oilcloth many a night before they went to sleep.
It fits my grip as well as it ever did his, and there's a tourney in Ashford Meadow.
Sweetfoot had an easier gait than Old Chestnut, and Dunk was still sore and tired when he spied the inn ahead, a tall daub and tinder building right beside a stream. The warm yellow light spilling from its windows looked so inviting that he could not pass it by.
I have 3 silvers, enough for a good meal and as much ale as I care to drink.
As he dismounted, a naked boy emerged dripping from the stream and began to dry himself on a rough-spun brown cloak.
Are you the stable boy?
The lad looked to be no more than 8 or 9, a pasty-faced, skinny thing, his bare feet caked in mud up to the ankle. His hair was the queerest thing about him. He had none.
I'll want my palfrey rubbed down, and oats for all 3. Can you tend them?
The boy looked at him brazenly.
I could, if I wanted.
Dunk frowned.
I'll have none of that. I am a knight, I'll have you know.
You don't look to be a knight.
Do all knights look the same?
No, but they don't look like you either. Your sword belt's made of rope.
So long as it holds my scabbard, it serves. Now see to my horses. You'll get a copper if you do well, and a clout in the ear if you don't.
He did not wait to see how the stable boy took that, but turned away and shouldered through the door. At this hour, he would have expected the inn to be crowded, but the common room was almost empty. A young lordling in a fine damask mantle was passed out at one table, snoring softly into a pool of spilled wine. Otherwise, there was no one. Dunk looked around uncertainly until a stout, short, whey-faced woman emerged from the kitchens.
Sit where you like. Is it ale you want or food?
Both.
Dunk took a chair by the window, well away from the sleeping man.
There's a good lamb, roasted with a crust of herbs, and some ducks my son shot down. Which will you have?
He had not eaten at an inn in half a year or more.
Both.
Ha ha! Well, you're big enough for it.
She drew a tankard of ale and brought it to his table.
Will you be wanting a room for the night as well?
No.
Dunk would have liked nothing better than a soft straw mattress and a roof above his head, but he needed to be careful with his coin. The ground would serve.
Some food, some ale, and is on to Ashford for me. How much farther is it?
Oh, a day's ride. Bear north when the road forks at the burned mill. Is my boy seen to your horses, or is he run off again?
No, he's here. You seem to have no custom.
Well, half the town's gone to see the tourney. My own would as well if I allowed it. They'll have this in when I go, but the boy would sooner swagger about the soldiers, and the girl turns to sighs and giggles every time a knight rides by. I swear I couldn't tell you why. Knights are built the same as other men, and I never knew a joust to change the price of eggs.
She eyed Dunk curiously. His sword and shield told her one thing, his rope belt and rough-spun tunic quite the other.
So you're bound for the tourney yourself, eh?
He took a sip of the ale before he answered. A nut-brown color it was, and thick on the tongue, just the way he liked it.
Aye, I mean to be a champion.
Aw, do you now?
The innkeep answered, polite enough. Across the room the lordling raised his head from the wine puddle. His face had a sallow, unhealthy cast to it beneath a rat's nest of sandy brown hair, and blond stubble crusted his chin. He rubbed his mouth, blinked at Dunk, and said,
I dreamed of you.
His hand trembled as he pointed a finger.
You stay away from me, do you hear? You stay well away.
Dunk stared at him uncertainly.
My lord?
The innkeep leaned close.
Now never you mind that one, sir. All he does is drink and talk about his dreams. I'll see about that food.
She bustled off.
Food.
The lordling made the word an obscenity. He staggered to his feet, one hand on the table to keep himself from falling.
I'm gonna be sick,
He announced. The front of his tunic was crusty red with old wine stains.
I wanted a whore, but there's none to be found here. All gone to Ashford Meadow. Got to be good. I need some wine.
He lurched unsteadily from the common room, and Dunk heard him climbing steps, singing under his breath.
A sad creature. But why did you think he knew me?
He pondered that a moment over his ale. The lamb was as good as any he had ever eaten, and the duck was even better, cooked with cherries and lemons and not near as greasy as most. The innkeep brought buttered peas as well, and oaten bread still hot from her oven.
This is what it means to be a knight.
He told himself as he sucked the last bit of meat off the bone.
Good food and ale whenever I wanted, and no one to clout me in the head.
He had a second tankard of ale with the meal, a third to wash it down, and a fourth because there was no one to tell him he couldn't. And when he was done, he paid the woman a silver stag and got back a fistful of coppers. It was full dark by the time Dunk emerged. His stomach was full and his purse was a little lighter, but he felt good as he walked to the stables. Ahead he heard a horse whicker.
Easy, lad,
The boy's voice said. Dunk quickened his step, frowning. He found the stable boy mounted on Thunder and wearing the old man's armor. The hauberk was longer than he was, and he had to tilt the helm back on his bald head, or else it would have covered his eyes. He looked utterly intent and utterly absurd. Dunk stopped in the stable door and laughed. The boy looked up, flushed, vaulted to the ground.
My lord, I did not mean...
Thief!
Dunk said, trying to sound stern.
Take off that armor, and be glad that Thunder didn't kick you in that fool head. He's a warhorse, not a boy's pony.
The boy took off the helm and flung it to the straw.
I could ride him as well as you.
He said, hold as you please.
Close your mouth. I want none of your insolence. Your hauberk too. Take it off. What do you think you were doing?
How can I tell you with my mouth closed?
The boy squirmed out of the chainmail and let it fall.
You can open your mouth to answer. Now pick up that mail, shake off the dirt, put it back where you found it, and the half-hem too. Did you feed the horses as I told you, and rub down Sweetfoot?
Yes.
The boy said as he shook straw from the mail.
You're going to Ashford, aren't you? Take me with you, sir.
The innkeep had warned him of this.
And what might your mother say to that?
My mother?
The boy wrinkled up his face.
My mother's dead. She wouldn't say anything.
He was surprised. Wasn't the innkeep his mother? Perhaps he was only prenticed to her. Dunk's head was a little fuzzy from the ale.
Are you an orphan boy?
He asked uncertainly.
Are you?
I was once, till the old man took me in.
If you took me, I could squire for you.
I have no need of a squire.
Every knight needs a squire. You look as though you need one more than most.
Dunk raised a hand threateningly.
And you look as though you need a clout in the ear, it seems to me. Fill the sack of oats. I'm off to Ashford alone.
If the boy was frightened, he hid it well. For a moment he stood there defiant, his arms crossed, but just as Dunk was about to give up on him, the lad turned and went for the oats. Dunk was relieved.
A pity I couldn't, but he has a good life here at the inn. A better one than he'd have squiring for a hedge knight. Taking him would be no kindness.
He could still feel the lad's disappointment, though. As he mounted Sweetfoot and took up Thunder's lead, Dunk decided that a copper penny might cheer him.
Here, lad, for your help.
He flipped the coin down at him with a smile, but the stable boy made no attempt to catch it. It fell in the dirt between his bare feet, and there he let it lie.
He'll scoop it up as soon as I'm gone.
Dunk told himself. He turned the palfrey and rode from the inn, leading the other two horses. The trees were bright with moonlight, and the sky was cloudless and speckled with stars. Yet as he headed down the road, he could feel the stable boy watching his back, sullen and silent. The shadows of the afternoon were growing long when Dunk reined up on the edge of broad Ashford meadow. 70 pavilions had already risen on the grassy field. Some were small, some were large, some square, some round, some of sailcloth, some of linen, some of silk. But all were brightly colored, with long banners streaming from their center poles, brighter than a field of wildflowers, with rich reds and sunny yellows, countless shades of green and blue, deep blacks and grays and purples. The old man had ridden with some of these knights. Others Dunk knew from tales told in common rooms and round campfires. Though he had never learned the magic of reading or writing, the old man had been relentless when it came to teaching him heraldry, often drilling him as they rode. The nightingales belonged to Lord G.R.R.M of the Marches, as skilled with the high harp as he was with a lance. The crowned stag was for Sir Lionel Baratheon, the Laughing Storm. Dunk picked out the Tarly Huntsman, Lord Dondarrion's Purple Lightning, the red apple of the Fossoways. There roared the Lion of Lannister, gold on crimson, and there the dark green sea turtle of the Estermont swam across a pale green field. The brown tent beneath Red Stallion could only belong to Sir Otho Bracken, who was called the Brood of Bracken since slaying Lord Quentin Blackwood 3 years past during the tourney at King's Landing. Dunk heard that Sir Otho had struck so hard with the blunted long axe that he stove in the visor of Lord Blackwood's helm and the face beneath it. He saw some Blackwood banners as well, on the west edge of the meadow, as distant from Sir Otho as they could. Marbrand, Mallister, Cargill, Westerling, Swan, Mullendore, Hightower, Florent, Frey, Penrose, Stokeworth, Daffy, Perrin, Wild, seemed as though every lordly house of the west and south had sent a knight or 3 to Ashford to see the fair maid and brave the lists in her honor. Yet however fine their pavilions were to look upon, he knew there was no place for him. A threadbare wool cloak would be all the shelter he had tonight. While the lords and great knights dined on capons and suckling pigs, Dunk's supper would be a hard, stringy piece of salt beef. He knew full well that if he made camp upon the gaudy field, he would need to suffer both silent scorn and open mockery. A few, perhaps, would treat him kindly, yet in a way that was almost worse. A hedge knight must hold on to his pride. Without it, he was no more than a sellsword.
I must earn my place in that company. If I fight well, some lord might take me into his household. I'll ride in a noble company then, and eat fresh meat every night in the castle hall, and raise my own pavilion at tourneys. But first, I must do well.
Reluctantly, he turned his back on the tourney grounds and led his horses into the trees. On the outskirts of the great meadow, a good half-mile from town and castle, he found a place where a bend in a brook had formed a deep pool. Reeds grew thick along its edge, and a tall, leafy elm presided over all. The spring grass there was as green as any knight's banner, and soft to the touch. It was a pretty spot, and no one had yet laid claim to it.
This will be my pavilion.
Dunk told himself.
A pavilion roofed with leaves, greener than even the banners of the Tyrrells and the Estemonts.
His horses came first. After they had been tended, he stripped and waded into the pool to wash away the dust of travel.
A true knight is cleanly as well as godly,
the old man always said, insisting that they wash themselves head to heels every time the moon turned, whether they smelled sour or not. Now that he was a knight, Dunk vowed he would do the same. He sat naked under the elm while he dried, enjoyed the warmth of the spring air on his skin as he watched a dragonfly move lazily among the reeds.
Why would they name it a dragonfly? It looks nothing like a dragon.
Not that Dunk had ever seen a dragon. The old man had, though. Dunk had heard the story 100 times, how Sir Arlan had been just a little boy when his grandfather had taken him to King's Landing, and how they had seen the last dragon there the year before it died. She had been a green female, small and stunted, her wings withered. None of her eggs had ever hatched.
Some say King Aegon poisoned her.
The old man would tell.
The third Aegon, that would be, not King Daeron's father, but the one they named Dragonbane, or Aegon the Unlucky. He was afraid of dragons, for he'd seen his uncle's beasts devour his own mother. The summers have been shorter since the last dragon died, and the winters longer and cooler.
The air had begun to cool as the sun dipped below the tops of the trees. When Dunk felt goose flesh prickling his arms, he beat his tunic and breeches against the trunk of the elm to knock off the worst of the dirt, and donned them once again. On the morrow he could seek out the master of the games and enroll his name, but he had other matters he ought to look into tonight if he hoped to challenge. He did not need to study his reflection in the water to know that he did not look much a knight, so he slung Sir Arlan's shield across his back to display the sigil. Hobbling the horses, Dunk left them to crop the thick green grass beneath the elm as he set out on foot for the tourney grounds. In normal times, the meadow served as a commons for the folk of Ashford town across the river, but now it was transformed. A second town had sprung up overnight, a town of silk instead of stone, larger and fairer than its elder sister. Dozens of merchants had erected their stalls along the edge of the field, selling felts and fruits, belts and boots, hides and hawks, earthenware, gemstones, pewter work, spices, feathers, and all manner of other goods. Jugglers, puppeteers, and magicians wandered among the crowds plying their trades, as did the whores and the cut-purses. Dunk kept a wary hand on his coin. When he caught the smell of sausages sizzling over a smoky fire, his mouth began to water. He bought one with a copper from his pouch and a horn of ale to wash it down. As he ate, he watched a painted wooden knight battle a painted wooden dragon. The puppeteer who worked the dragon was good to watch too, a tall drink of water, with olive skin and black hair of Daeron. She was slim as a lance, with no breasts to speak of, but Dunk liked her face, and the way her fingers made the dragon snap and slither at the end of its strings. He would have tossed the girl a copper, if he'd had one to spare, but just now he needed every coin. There were armorers among the merchants, as he had hoped. A Tyroshi with a forked blue beard was selling ornate helms, gorgeous, fantastical things, wrought in the shapes of birds and beasts, and chased with gold and silver. Elsewhere he found a sword-maker hawking cheap steel blades, and another whose work was much finer, but it was not a sword he lacked. The man he needed was all the way down at the end of the row, a shirt of fine chainmail and a pair of lobstered steel gauntlets displayed on the table before him. Dunk inspected them closely.
You do good work.
None better.
A stumpy man, the smith was no more than 5 feet tall, yet wide as Dunk about the chest and arms. He had a black beard, huge hands, and no trace of humility.
I need armor for the tourney. A suit of good mail, with gorget, greaves, and a great helm.
The old man's half-helm would fit his head, but he wanted more protection for his face than a nasal bar alone could provide. The armorer looked him up and down.
You're a big one, but I've armored bigger.
He came out from behind the table.
Kneel, I want to measure those shoulders. Aye, that thick neck of yours.
Dunk knelt. The armorer laid a length of knotted rawhide along his shoulders, grunted, slipped it about his throat, grunted again.
Lift your arm. No, the right.
He grunted a third time.
There, now you can stand.
The inside of a leg, the thickness of his calf, and the size of his waist elicited further grunts.
I have some pieces in me wagon that might do for you. Nothing prettied up with gold or silver, mind you. Just good steel, strong and plain. I make helms that look like helms. Not winged pigs and queer foreign fruits. But mine will serve you better if you take a lance to the face.
That's all I want. How much?
800 stags, for I'm feeling kindly.
800?
It had been more than he expected.
I could trade you some old armor, made for a smaller man. A half-helm, a mail hauberk.
Steely Pate sells his own work. Might be I can make use of the metal. It's not too rusted. I'll take it and armor you for 600.
Dunk could beseech Pate to give him the armor on trust. He knew what sort of answer that request would likely get. He had traveled with the old man long enough to learn that merchants were notoriously mistrustful of hedge knights, some of whom were little more than robbers.
I'll give you 2 silvers now, and the armor, and the rest of the coin on the morrow.
The armorer studied him for a moment.
2 silvers buys you a day. After that I sell me work to the next man.
Dunk scooped the stags out of his pouch and placed them in the armorer's calloused hand.
You'll get it all. I mean to be champion here.
Do you?
Pate bit one of the coins.
And these others, I suppose they just all came to cheer you on.
The moon was well up by the time he turned his steps back toward his elm. Behind him, Ashford Meadow was ablaze with torchlight. The sound of song and laughter drifted across the grass, but his own mood was somber. He could think of only one way to raise the coin for his armor, and if he should be defeated.
One victory is all I need,
he muttered aloud.
That's not so much to hope for.
Even so, the old man would never have hoped for it. Sir Arlan had not ridden a tilt since the day he had been unhorsed by the Prince of Dragonstone in a tourney at Storm's End, many years ago.
'Tis not every man who can boast that he broke 7 lances against the finest knight in the 7 kingdoms. I could never hope to do better, so why should I try?
Dunk had suspected that Sir Arlan's age had more to do with it than the Prince of Dragonstone did, but he never dared say as much. The old man had his pride, even at the last.
I am quick and strong. He always said so. What was true for him need not be true for me,
he told himself stubbornly. He was moving through a patch of weed, chewing over his chances in his head, when he saw the flicker of firelight through the bushes.
What is this?
Dunk did not stop to think. Suddenly his sword was in his hand and he was crashing through the grass. He burst out roaring and cursing, only to jerk to a sudden halt at the sight of the boy beside the campfire.
You!
He lowered the sword.
What are you doing here?
Cooking a fish?
Said the bald boy.
Do you want some?
I meant, how did you get here? Did you steal a horse?
I rode in the back of a cart with a man who was bringing some lambs to the castle for my Lord of Ashford's table.
Well, you'd best see if he's gone yet, or find another cart. I won't have you here.
You can't make me go. I've had enough of that inn.
I'll have no more insolence from you. I should throw you over my horse right now and take you home.
You'd need to ride all the way to King's Landing. You'd miss the tourney.
King's Landing?
For a moment, Dunk wondered if he was being mocked, but the boy had no way of knowing that he was born in King's Landing as well.
Another wretch from Flea Bottom, like as not. And who can blame him for wanting out of that place?
He felt foolish standing there with a sword in hand over an 8-year-old orphan. He sheathed it, glowering so the boy would see he would suffer no nonsense.
I ought to give him a good beating at least,
he thought, but the child looked so pitiful he could not bring himself to hit him. He glanced around the camp. The fire was burning merrily within a neat circle of rocks. The horses had been brushed and clothes were hanging from the elm, drying above the flames.
What are those doing here?
I washed them, and I groomed the horses, made the fire, and caught this fish. I would have raised your pavilion, but I couldn't find one.
There's my pavilion.
Dunk swept a hand over his head at the branches of the tall elm that loomed above them.
That's a tree,
the boy said, unimpressed.
It's all the pavilion a true knight needs. I would sooner sleep under the stars in some smoky tent.
What if it rains?
The tree will shelter me.
Trees leak.
So they do. Well, if truth be told, I lack the coin for a pavilion, and you'd best turn that fish, or be burned at the bottom and raw on the top. You'll never make a kitchen boy.
I would, if I wanted,
the boy said, but he turned to the fish.
What happened to your hair?
The maesters shaved it off.
Suddenly self-conscious, the boy pulled up the hood of his dark brown cloak covering his head. Dunk had heard that they did that sometimes, to treat lice or rootworms or certain sicknesses.
Are you ill?
No. What's your name?
Dunk.
The wretched boy laughed aloud, as if that was the funniest thing he had ever heard.
Dunk! Sir Dunk! That's no name for a knight. Is it short for Duncan?
Was it? The old man had called him just Dunk for as long as he could recall, and he had not remembered much of his life before.
Duncan, yes. So Duncan of...
Duncan had no other name, nor any house. Sir Arlan had found him living wild in the stews and alleys of Flea Bottom. He had never known his father or mother. What was he to say? Sir Duncan of Flea Bottom did not sound very knightly. He could take Pennytree, but what if they asked him where it was? Dunk had never been to Pennytree, nor had the old man talked much about it. He frowned for a moment, and then blurted out,
Sir Duncan the Tall.
He was tall. No one could dispute that, and it sounded puissant, though the little sneak did not seem to think so.
I have never heard of any Sir Duncan at all.
Do you know every knight in the 7 kingdoms, then?
The boy looked at him boldly.
The good ones.
I'm as good as any. After the tourney, they'll all know that. Do you have a name, thief?
The boy hesitated.
Egg.
Dunk did not laugh.
His head does look like an egg. Small boys can be cruel, and grown men as well. Egg, I should beat you bloody, send you on your way, but the truth is, I have no pavilion, and I have no squire either. If you'll swear you do as you're told, I'll let you serve me for the tourney. After that, well, we'll see. If I decide you're worth your keep, you'll have clothes on your back and food in your belly. The clothes might be rough spun, and the food salt beef and salt fish, and maybe some venison from time to time where there's no foresters about. But you won't go hungry, and I promise not to beat you except when you deserve it.
Egg smiled.
Yes, my lord.
Sir,
Dunk corrected.
I'm only a Hedge Knight.
He wondered if the old man was looking down on him.
I will teach him the art to battle, same as you taught me, sir. He seems a likely lad. Might be one day he'll make a knight.
The fish was still a little raw on the inside when they ate it, and the boy had not removed all the bones, but it still tasted a world better than hard salt beef. Egg soon fell asleep beside the dying fire. Dunk lay on his back nearby, his big hands behind his head, gazing up at the night sky. He could hear the distant music from the tourney grounds, half a mile away. The stars were everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. One fell as he was watching, a bright green streak that flashed across the black, and then was gone.
A falling star brings luck to him who sees it, but the rest of them are all in the pavilions by now, staring up at silk instead of sky, so the luck is mine alone.
In the morning he woke to the sound of a cock crowing. Egg was still there, curled up beneath the old man's second-best cloak.
Well, the boy did not run off during the night. That's a start.
He prodded him awake with his foot.
Up! There's work to do.
The boy rose quickly enough, rubbing his eyes.
Help me saddle Sweetfoot.
What about breakfast?
There's salt beef after we're done.
I'd sooner eat the horse, sir.
You'll eat my fist if you don't do as you're told. Get the brushes. They're in the saddle sack. Yes, that one.
Together, they brushed out the palfrey's sorrel coat, hefted Sir Arlan's best saddle over her back, and clinched it tight. Egg was a good worker once he put his mind to it, Dunk saw.
I expect I'll be gone most of the day.
He told the boy as he mounted.
You're to stay here and put the camp in order. Make sure no other thieves come nosing about.
Can I have a sword to run them off with?
Egg asked. He had blue eyes, Dunk saw, very dark, almost purple. His bald head made them seem huge somehow.
No, a knife's enough. You had best be here when I come back. Do you hear me? Rob me and run off and I'll hunt you down. Swear I will. With dogs.
You don't have any dogs.
I'll get some, just for you.
He turned Sweetfoot's head toward the meadow and moved off at a brisk trot, hoping the threat would be enough to keep the boy honest. Save for the clothes on his back, the armor in his sack, and the horse beneath him, everything Dunk owned in the world was back at that camp.
I am a great fool to trust the boy so far, but it is no more than the old man did for me. The mother must have sent him to me so that I could pay my debt.
As he crossed the field, he heard the ring of hammers from the riverside, where carpenters were nailing together jousting barriers and raising a lofty viewing stand. A few new pavilions were going up as well, while the knights who had come earlier slept off last night's revels or sat to break their fasts. Dunk could smell wood smoke and bacon as well. To the north of the meadow flowed the river Cockleswent, a vassal stream to the mighty Mander. Beyond the shallow ford lay town and castle. Dunk had seen many a market town during his journeys with the old man. This was prettier than most. The whitewashed houses with their thatched roofs had an inviting aspect to them. When he was smaller, he used to wonder what it would be like to live in such a place. To sleep every night with a roof over your head, and wake every morning with the same walls wrapped around you.
It may be soon that I'll know. Aye, and Egg too.
It could happen. Stranger things happened every day. Ashford Castle was a stone structure built in the shape of a triangle, with round towers rising 30 feet tall at each point, and thick crenellated walls running between them. Orange banners flew from its battlements, displaying the white sun and chevron sigil of its lord. Men-at-arms in orange and white livery stood outside the gates with halberds, watching people come and go. seemingly more intent on joking with a pretty milkmaid than keeping anyone out. Dunk reined up in front of the short, bearded man he took for their captain and asked for the master of the games.
It's Plumber you want. He's steward here. I'll show you.
Inside the yard, a stable boy took Sweetfoot for him. Dunk slung Sir Arlan's battered shield over his shoulder and followed the guard captain to the back of the stables, to a turret built into an angle of the curtain wall. Steep stone steps led up to the wall walk.
Come to enter your master's name for the list?
The captain asked as they climbed.
It's my own name I'll be putting in.
Is it now?
Was the man smirking? Dunk was not certain.
That door there. I'll leave you to it and get back to my post.
When Dunk pushed open the door, the steward was sitting at a trestle table, scratching on a piece of parchment with a quill. He had thinning gray hair and a narrow, pinched face.
Yes? What do you want, man?
Dunk pulled the door shut.
Are you Plumber the steward? I came for the tourney, to enter the lists.
Plumber pursed his lips.
My lord's tourney's a contest for knights. Are you a knight?
He nodded, wondering if his ears were red.
A knight with a name, mayhaps?
Dunk.
Why had he said that?
Sir Duncan the Tall.
And where might you be from, Sir Duncan the Tall?
Every place. I was squire to Sir Arlan of Penetry since I was 5 or 6. This is his shield.
He showed it to the steward.
He was coming to the tourney, but he caught a chill and died. So I came in his stead. He knighted me before he passed, with his own sword.
Dunk drew the long sword and laid it on the scarred wooden table between them. The master of the lists gave the blade no more than a glance.
A sword it is for a certainty. I have never heard of this Arlan of Penetry, however. Were you his squire, you say?
He always said he meant for me to be a knight, as he was. When he was dying, he called for his long sword and bade me kneel. He touched me once on the right shoulder and once on the left, and said some words, and when I got up, he said I was a knight.
The man Plumber rubbed his nose.
Any knight can make a knight, it is true. Though it is more customary to stand a vigil and be anointed by a septon before taking your vows. Were there any witnesses to your dubbing?
Only a robin up in a thorn tree. I heard it as the old man was saying the words. He charged me to be a good knight and true, to obey the 7 gods, defend the weak and innocent, serve my lord faithfully, and defend the realm with all my might. And I swore that I would.
No doubt.
Plumber did not deign to call him Sir, Dunk could not help but notice.
I shall need to consult with Lord Ashford. Will you, or your late master, be known to any of the good knights here assembled?
Dunk thought a moment.
There was a pavilion flying the banner of House Daeron, the black with purple lighting.
Yes, that would be Sir Manfred of that house.
Sir Arlan served his lord father in Dawn 3 years past. Sir Manfred might remember me.
I would advise you to speak to him. If he will vouch for you, bring him here with you on the morrow, at this same time.
As you say, my lord.
He started for the door.
Sir Duncan,
the steward called after him. Dunk turned back.
You are aware that those vanquished in tourney forfeit their arms, armor, and horse to the victors, and must needs ransom them back.
I know.
And you have the coin to pay such a ransom?
Now he knew his ears were red.
I won't have need of coin,
he said, praying it was true.
All I need is 1 victory. If I win my first tilt, I'll have the loser's armor and horse, or his gold, and I can stand a loss myself.
He walked slowly down the steps, reluctant to get on with what he must do next. In the yard, he cornered one of the stable boys.
I must speak with Lord Ashford's master of horse.
I'll find him for you.
It was cool and dim in the stables. An unruly gray stallion snapped at him as he passed, but Sweetfoot only whickered softly and nuzzled his hand when he raised it to her nose.
You're a good girl, aren't you?
He murmured. The old man always said that a knight should never love a horse, since more than a few were like to die under him, but he never heeded his own counsel either. Dunk had often seen him spend his last copper on an apple for Old Chestnut, or some oats for Sweetfoot and Thunder. The palfrey had been Sir Arlan's riding horse, and she had borne him tirelessly over thousands of miles, all up and down the 7 kingdoms. Dunk felt as though he were betraying an old friend, but what choice did he have? Chestnut was too old to be worth much of anything, and Thunder must carry him in the lists. Some time passed before the Master of Horse deigned to appear. As he walked, Dunk heard a blare of trumpets from the walls and a voice in the yard. Curious, he led Sweetfoot to the stable door to see what was happening. A large party of knights and mounted archers poured through the gates, 100 men at least, riding some of the most splendid horses that Dunk had ever seen.
Some great lord has come.
He grabbed the arm of the stable boy as he ran past.
Who are they?
The boy looked at him queerly.
Oi, can't you see the banners?
He wrenched free and hurried off.
The banners?
As Dunk turned his head, a gust of wind lifted the black silk pennon atop the tall staff, and the fierce three-headed dragon of House Targaryen seemed to spread its wings, breathing scarlet fire. The banner-bearer was a tall knight in white scale armor chased with gold, a pure white cloak streaming from his shoulders. 2 of the other riders were armored in white from head to heel as well.
Kingsguard knights with the royal banner.
Small wonder Lord Ashford and his sons came hurrying out of the doors of the keep, and the fair maid too, a short girl with yellow hair and a round pink face.
She does not seem fair to me,
Dunk thought. The puppet girl was prettier.
Boy, let go of that nag and see to my horse.
He's talking to me.
Dunk realized.
I am not a stable boy, my lord.
Not clever enough?
The speaker wore a black cloak bordered in scarlet satin, but underneath was a raiment bright as flame, all reds and yellows and golds. Slim and straight as a dirk, though only of middling height, he was near Dunk's own age. Curls of silver gold hair framed a face sculpted and imperious. High brow and sharp cheekbones, straight nose, pale smooth skin without blemish. His eyes were a deep violet color.
If you cannot manage a horse, fetch me some wine and a pretty wench.
My lord, pardons. I'm no serving man either. I have the honor to be a knight.
Knighthood has fallen on sad days,
said the princeling. But then one of the stable boys came rushing up, and he turned away to hand him the reins of his palfrey, a splendid blood bay. Dunk was forgotten in an instant. Relieved, he slunk back inside the stables to wait for the Master of Horse. He felt ill at ease enough around the lords in their pavilions. He had no business speaking to princes. That the beautiful stripling was a prince he had no doubt. The Targaryens were the blood of lost Valyria across the seas, and their silver gold hair and violet eyes set them apart from common men. Dunk knew Prince Baelor was older, but the youth might well be one of his sons, Valar, who was often called the young prince, who set him apart from his father, or Mataris, the even younger prince, as old Lord Swan's fool had named him once. There were other princelings as well, cousins to Valar and Mataris. Good King Daeron had 4 grown sons, 3 with sons of their own. The line of the Dragon Kings had almost died out during his father's day, but it was commonly said that Daeron II and his sons had left it secure for all time.
You, man, you asked for me.
Lord Ashford's Master of Horse had a red face, made redder by his orange livery, and a brusque manner of speaking.
What is it? I have no time for
I want to sell this palfrey.
Dunk broke in quickly before the man could dismiss him.
She's a good horse, sure of foot.
I have no time, I tell you.
The man gave Sweetfoot no more than a glance.
My lord of Ashford has no need of such. Take her to the town. Perhaps Henry will give you a silver free.
That quick he was turning away.
Thank you, my lord.
Dunk said before he could go.
My lord, has the king come?
No, thank the gods. This infestation of princes is trial enough. Where am I going to find the stalls for all these animals? And fodder?
He strode off, shouting at his stable boys. By the time Dunk left the stable, Lord Ashford had escorted his princely guests into the hall, but 2 of the Kingsguard knights in their white armor and snowy cloaks still lingered in the yard, talking with the captain of the guard. Dunk halted before them.
My lords, I am Sir Duncan the Tall.
Well met, Sir Duncan,
answered the bigger of the white knights.
I am Sir Roland Craycon. This is my sworn brother, Sir Donnel of Duskendale.
The 7 champions of the Kingsguard were the most puissant warriors in all the 7 kingdoms, saving only perhaps the crown prince, Baelor Breakspear himself.
Have you come to enter the lists?
Dunk asked anxiously.
It would not be fitting for us to ride against those we are sworn to protect,
answered Sir Donnel, red of hair and beard.
Prince Valar has the honor of being one of Lady Ashford's champions,
explained Sir Roland.
and 2 of his cousins mean to challenge. The rest of us have only come to watch.
Relieved, Dunk thanked the White Knights for their kindness, and rode out through the castle gates before another prince should think to accost him.
3 princelings.
He pondered as he turned the palfrey toward the streets of Ashford town. Valar was the eldest son of Prince Baelor, second in line to the Iron Throne, but Dunk did not know how much of his father's fabled prowess with lance and sword he might have inherited. About the other Targaryen princes he knew even less.
What will I do if I have to fight against a prince? Will I even be allowed to challenge one so highborn?
He did not know the answer. The old man had often said he was thick as a castle wall, and just now he felt it. Henley liked the look of Sweetfoot well enough, until he heard Dunk wanted to sell her, and all the stableman could see were her faults. He offered 300 silvers. Dunk said he must have 3,000. After much arguing and cursing, they settled at 750 silver stags. That was a deal closer to Henley's starting price than to Dunk's, which made him feel the loser in the tilt. But the stableman would go no higher, so in the end he had no choice but to yield. A second argument began when Dunk declared that the price did not include the saddle, and Henley insisted that it did. Finally it was all settled. As Henley left to fetch his coin, Dunk stroked Sweetfoot's mane and told her to be brave.
If I win, I'll come back and buy you again, I promise.
He had no doubt that all the palfrey's flaws would vanish in intervening days, and she would be worth twice what she was today. The stableman gave him 3 gold pieces and the rest in silver. Dunk bit one of the gold coins and smiled. He had never tasted gold before, nor handled it. Dragons, men called the coins, since they were stamped with the 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen on one side. The other bore the likeness of the king. 2 of the coins Henley gave him had King Daeron's face. The third was older, well-worn, and showed a different man. His name was there under his head, but Dunk could not read the letters. Gold had been shaved off its edges, too, he saw. He pointed this out to Henley, and loudly. The stableman grumbled, but handed over another few silvers, and a fistful of coppers to make up the weight. Dunk handed a few of the coppers right back, and nodded at Sweetfoot.
That's for her. See that she has some oats tonight. Aye, and an apple too.
With the shield on his arm, and the sack of old armor slung over his shoulder, Dunk set out on foot through the sunny streets of Ashford town. The heft of all that coin in his pouch made him feel queer, almost giddy on one hand, and anxious on the other. The old man had never trusted him with more than a coin or 2 at a time. He could live a year on this much money.
And what would I do when it's gone? Sell thunder?
That road ended in beggary or outlawry.
This chance will never come again. I must risk all.
By the time he splashed back across the ford to the south bank of the Coggleswent, the morning was almost done, and the tourney grounds had come to life once more. The wine sellers and sausage makers were doing a brisk trade. A dancing bear was shuffling along to his master's playing as a singer sang the bear, and the maiden fair. Jugglers were juggling, and the puppeteers were just finishing another fight. Dunk stopped to watch the wooden dragon slain. When the puppet knight cut its head off and red sawdust spilled out onto the grass, he laughed aloud and threw the girl 2 coppers.
One for last night,
he called. She caught the coins in the air and threw him back a smile as sweet as any he had ever seen.
Is it me she smiles at, or the coins?
Dunk had never been with a girl, and they made him feel nervous. Once, 3 years past, when the old man's purse was full after half a year in the service of blind Lord Florent, he told Dunk that the time had come to take him to a brothel and make him a man. He'd been drunk, though, and when he was sober, he did not remember. Dunk had been too embarrassed to remind him. He was not certain he wanted a whore anyway. If he could not have a high-born maiden like a proper knight, he wanted one who at least liked him more than his silver.
Will you drink a horn of ale?
He asked the puppet girl as she was scooping the sawdust blood back into her dragon.
With me, I mean. Or a sausage. I had a sausage last night, and it was good. They're made with pork, I think.
I thank you, Millard, but we have another show.
The girl rose and ran off to the fierce fat Dornish woman who worked the puppet knight, while Dunk stood there feeling stupid. He liked the way she ran, though. A pretty girl, and tall.
I would not have to kneel to kiss that one.
He knew how to kiss. A tavern girl had showed him one night in Lannisport a year ago, but she had been so short she had to sit on the table to reach his lips. The memory made his ears burn. What a great fool he was. It was jousting he should be thinking about, not kissing. Lord Ashford's carpenters were whitewashing the waist-high wooden barriers that would separate the jousters. Dunk watched them work a while. There were 5 lanes, arrayed north to south, so none of the competitors would ride with the sun in his eyes. A 3-tiered viewing stand had been raised on the eastern side of the lists, with an orange canopy to shield the lords and ladies from rain and sun. Most would sit on benches, but 4 high-backed chairs had been erected in the center of the platform for Lord Ashford, the fair maid, and the visiting princes. On the eastern verge of the meadow, a quintain had been set up, and a dozen knights were tilting at it, sending the pole arms spinning every time they struck the splintered shield suspended from one end. Dunk watched the brood of bracken take his turn, and then Lord Daeron of the marches.
I do not have as good a seat as any of them,
he thought uneasily. Elsewhere, men were training afoot, going at each other with wooden swords, while their squires stood shouting ribald advice. Dunk watched a stocky youth try to hold off a muscular knight who seemed lithe and quick as a mountain cat. Both had the red apple of the Fossoways painted on their shields, but the younger man's was soon hacked and chipped to pieces.
Here's an apple that's not ripe yet,
the older said as he slammed the other's helm. The younger Fossoway was bruised and bloody by the time he yielded, but his foe was hardly winded. He raised his visor, looked about, saw Dunk, and said,
You there. Yes, you, the big one. Knight of the Winged Chalice. Is that a long sword you wear?
It's mine by rights. I am Sir Duncan the Tall.
And I, Sir Steffon Fossoway. Would you care to try me, Sir Duncan the Tall? It would be good to have someone new to cross swords with. My cousin's not ripe yet, as you've seen.
Do it, Sir Duncan,
urged the beaten Fossoway as he removed his helm.
I may not be ripe, but my good cousin is rotten to the core. Knock the seeds out of him.
Dunk shook his head. Why were these lordlings involving him in their quarrel? He wanted no part of it.
I thank you, sir, but I have matters to attend.
He was uncomfortable carrying so much coin. The sooner he paid steely pate and got his armor, the happier he would be. Sir Steffon looked at him scornfully.
The Hedge Knight has matters.
He glanced about and found another likely opponent loitering nearby.
Sir Grants, well met. Come try me. I know every feeble trick my cousin Raymond has mastered, and it seems that Sir Duncan needs to return to the hedges. Come, come.
Duncan stalked away, red-faced. He did not have many tricks himself, feeble or otherwise, and he did not want anyone to see him fight until the tourney. The old man always said that the better you know your foe, the easier it was to best him. Knights like Sir Steffon had sharp eyes to find a man's weakness at a glance. Dunk was strong and quick, and his weight and reach were in his favor, but he did not believe for a moment that his skills were the equal of these others. Sir Arlan had taught him as best he could, but the old man had never been the greatest of knights, even when young. Great knights did not live their lives in the hedges, or die by the side of a muddy road.
That will not happen to me,
Dunk vowed.
I will show them that I can be more than a hedge knight.
Sir Duncan,
the younger Fossoway hurried to catch him.
I should not have urged you to try my cousin. I was angry with his arrogance, and you are so large. I thought, well, it was wrong of me. You wear no armor. He would have broken your hand if he could, or a knee. He likes to batter men in the training yard, so they will be bruised and vulnerable later, should he meet them in the lists.
He did not break you.
No, but I am his own blood, though his is the senior branch of the apple tree, as he never ceases to remind me. I am Raymond Fossoway.
Well met. Will you and your cousin ride in the tourney?
He will, for certainty. As to me, would that I could. I am only a squire as yet. My cousin has promised to knight me, but insists that I am not ripe yet.
Raymond had a square face, a pug nose, and short, woolly hair, but his smile was engaging.
You have the look of a challenger, it seems to me. Whose shield do you mean to strike?
It makes no difference,
said Dunk. That was what you were supposed to say, though it made all the difference in the world.
I will not enter the list until the 3rd day.
And by then some of the champions will have fallen, yes. Well, may the warrior smile on you, sir.
And you. If he's only a squire, what business do I have being a knight? One of us is a fool.
The silver in Dunk's pouch clinked with every step, but he could lose it all in a heartbeat, he knew. Even the rules of this tourney worked against him, making it very unlikely that he would face a green or feeble foe. There were a dozen different forms a tourney might follow, according to the whim of the lord who hosted it. Some were mock battles between teams of knights. Others, wild melees where the glory went to the last fighter left standing. Where individual combats were the rule, pairings were sometimes determined by lot, and sometimes by the master of the games. Lord Ashford was staging this tourney to celebrate his daughter's 13th name day. The fair maid would sit by her father's side as the reigning queen of love and beauty. 5 champions wearing her favors would defend her. All others must perforce be challengers, but any man who could defeat one of the champions would take his place and stand as a champion himself, until such a time as another champion unseated him. At the end of 3 days of jousting, the 5 who remained would determine whether the fair maid would retain the crown of love and beauty, or whether another would wear it in her place. Dunk stared at the grassy lists and the empty chairs on the viewing stand and pondered his chances. One victory was all he needed. Then he could name himself one of the champions of Ashford Meadow, if only for an hour. The old man had lived nigh on 60 years and had never been a champion.
It's not too much to hope for if the gods are good.
He thought back on all the songs he had heard, songs of blind Simeon's star eyes, and of noble Serwyn of the mirror shield, of Prince Aemon the dragon knight, Sir Riam Redwyn, and Florian the fool. They had all won victories against foes far more terrible than he would face.
But they were great heroes, brave men of noble birth, except for Florian. And what am I? Dunk of Flea Bottom? Or Sir Duncan the Tall?
He supposed he would learn the truth of that soon enough. He hefted the sack of armor and turned his feet toward the merchant's stalls in search of Steely Pate. Egg had worked manfully at the campsite. Dunk was pleased. He had been half afraid his squire would run off again.
Did you get a good price for your palfrey?
How did you know I sold her?
Well, you rode off and walked back, and if robbers had stolen her, you'd be more angry than you are.
I got enough for this.
Dunk took out his new armor to show the boy.
If you're ever to be a knight, you need to know good steel from bad. Look here, this is fine work. This mail is double chain, each link bound to 2 others. See? It gives more protection than a single chain. And the helm, pates rounded the top. See how it curves? A sword or an axe will slide off where it might bite through a flat-topped helm.
Dunk lowered the great helm over his head.
How does it look?
There's no visor.
Egg pointed out.
There's air holes. Visors are points of weakness.
Steely Pate had said as much.
If you knew how many knights have taken an arrow in the eye as they lifted their visor for a suck of cool air, you'd never want one.
He told Dunk.
There's no crest either. It's just plain.
Dunk lifted off the helm.
Plain is fine for the likes of me. See how bright the steel is? It will be your task to keep it that way. You know how to scour mail?
In a barrel of sand. But you don't have a barrel. Did you buy a pavilion too, sir?
I didn't get that good a price. The boy's too bold for his own good. I ought to beat that out of him.
He knew he would not, though. He liked the boldness. He needed to be bolder himself.
My squire's braver than I am, and more clever. You did well here, Egg,
Dunk told him.
On the morrow, you'll come with me. Have a look at the tourney grounds. We'll buy oats for the horses and fresh bread for ourselves. Maybe good cheese as well. They were selling good cheese at one of the stalls.
I won't need to go into the castle, will I?
Why not? One day I mean to live in a castle. I hope to win a place above the salt before I'm done.
The boy said nothing.
Perhaps he fears to enter the Lord's Hall. That's no more than might be expected. He will grow out of it in time.
He went back to admiring his armor and wondering how long he would wear it. Sir Manfred was a thin man, with a sour look on his face. He bore a black surcoat slashed with the purple lightning of House Dundarian, but Dunk would have remembered him anyway by his unruly mane of red gold hair.
Sir Arlan served your Lord Father when he and Lord Karen burned the Vulture King out of Red Mountain, sir,
he said from one knee.
I was only a boy then, but I squired for him, Sir Arlan of Pennytree.
Sir Manfred scowled.
No, I know him not, nor you, boy.
Dunk showed him the old man's shield.
This was the sigil, the winged chalice.
My Lord Father took 800 knights, and near 4,000 foot into the mountains. I cannot be expected to remember every one of them, nor what shields they carried. It may be that you were there, but...
Sir Manfred shrugged. Dunk was struck speechless for an instant.
The old man took a wound in your father's service. How can you have forgotten him? They will not allow me to challenge unless some knight or lord will vouch for me.
And what is that to me? I have given you enough of my time, sir.
If he went back to the castle without Sir Manfred, he was lost. Dunk eyed the purple lightning embroidered across the black wool of Sir Manfred's surcoat, and said,
I remember your father telling the camp how your house got his sigil. One stormy night, as the first of your line bore the message across the Dornish marches, an arrow killed his horse beneath him and spilled him on the ground. 2 Dornishmen came out of the darkness in ring mail and crested helms. His sword had broken beneath him when he fell. When he saw that, he thought he was doomed. But as the Dornishmen closed to cut him down, lightning cracked down from the sky. It was bright burning purple, and it split, striking the Dornishmen in their steel and killing them both where they stood. The message gave the Storm King victory over the Dornish, and in thanks he raised the messenger to lordship. He was the first Lord Dondarrion, so he took for his arms a forked purple lightning bolt on a black field powdered with stars.
If Dunk thought the tale would impress Sir Manfred, he could not have been more wrong.
Every pot boy and groom who has served my father hears that story soon or late, knowing it does not make you a knight. Be gone with you, sir.
It was with a leaden heart that Dunk returned to Ashford Castle, wondering what he might say so that Plummer would grant him the right of challenge. The steward was not in his turret chamber, however. A guard told him he might be found in the great hall.
Shall I wait here? How long will he be?
How should I know? Do what you please.
The great hall was not so great as halls went, but Ashford was a small castle. Dunk entered through a side door and spied the steward at once. He was standing with Lord Ashford and a dozen other men at the top of the hall. He walked toward them, beneath a wall hung with wool tapestries of fruits and flowers.
More concerned if they were your sons, I'll wager.
An angry man was saying as Dunk approached. His straight hair and square-cut beard were so fair they seemed white in the dimness of the hall. But as he got closer, he saw that they were in truth a pale silvery color, touched with gold.
Daeron has done this before,
another replied. Plummer was standing so as to block Dunk's view of the speaker.
You should never have commanded him to enter the lists. He belongs on a tourney field no more than Eris does, or Rhaegal.
By which you mean he'd sooner ride a whore than a horse,
the first man said. Thickly built and powerful, the prince, he was surely a prince, wore a leather brigandine covered with silver studs beneath a heavy black cloak trimmed with ermine. Pox scars marked his cheeks, only partly concealed by his silvery beard.
I do not need to be reminded of my son's failings, brother. He has only 18 years. He can change. He will change, gods be damned, or I swear I'll see him dead.
Don't be an utter fool. Daeron is what he is, but he is your blood and mine. I have no doubt Sir Roland will turn him up, and Aegon with him.
When the tourney is over, perhaps.
Arion is here. He has a better lance than Daeron in any case, if it is the tourney that concerns you.
Dunk could see the speaker now. He was seated in the high seat, a sheaf of parchments in one hand, Lord Ashford hovering at his shoulder. Even seated, he looked to be a head taller than the other, to judge from the long straight legs stretched out before him. His short-cropped hair was dark and peppered with gray, his strong jaw clean-shaven. His nose looked as though it had been broken more than once. Though he was dressed very plainly, in green doublet, brown mantle, and scuffed boots, there was a weight to him, a sense of power and certainty. It came to Dunk that he had walked in on something that he ought never have heard.
I'd best go and come back later when they're done,
he decided, but it was already too late. The prince with the silver beard suddenly took note of him.
Who are you, and what do you mean by bursting in on us?
He demanded harshly.
He is the knight that our good steward was expecting,
the seated man said, smiling at Dunk in a way that suggested he had been aware of him all that time.
You and I are the intruders here, brother. Come closer, sir.
Dunk edged forward, uncertain of what was expected of him. He looked at Plummer, but got no help there. The pinch-faced steward, who had been so forceful yesterday, now stood silent, studying the stones of the floor.
My lords, I asked Sir Manfred of Daeron to vouch for me so that I might enter the lists, but he refuses. He says he knows me not. Sir Arlan served him, though, I swear it. I have his sword and shield. A
sword and a shield do not make a knight,
declared Lord Ashford, a big bald man with a round red face.
Plummer has spoken to me of you. Even if we accept that these arms belong to this Sir Arlan of Pennytree, it may well be that you found him dead and stole them. Unless you have some better proof of what you say, some writing or...
I remember Sir Arlan of Pennytree,
the man in the high seat said quietly.
He never won a tourney that I know, but he never shamed himself either. At King's Landing 16 years ago, he overthrew Lord Stokeworth and the Bastard of Harrenhal in the melee, and many years before at Lannisport he unhorsed the Grey Lion himself. The lion was not so grey then, to be sure.
He told me of that many times.
The tall man studied him.
Then you will remember the Grey Lion's true name, I have no doubt.
For a moment, there was nothing in Dunk's head at all. 1,000 times the old man had told that tale. 1,000 times. The lion, his name. He was near despair when suddenly it came.
Sir Daemon Lannister, the Grey Lion. He's Lord of Castle Rock now.
So he is,
said the tall man pleasantly.
And he enters the lists on the morrow.
He rattled the sheaf of papers in his hands.
How can you possibly remember some insignificant hedge knight who chanced to unhorse Daemon Lannister 16 years ago?
Said the prince with the silver beard, frowning.
I make it a practice to learn all I can of my foes.
Why would you deign to joust with a hedge knight?
It was 9 years past at Storm's End. Old Baratheon held a hastily to celebrate the birth of a grandson. The lots made Sir Arlan my opponent in the first tilt. We broke 4 lances before I finally unhorsed him.
7,
insisted Dunk.
And that was against the Prince of Dragonstone.
No sooner were the words out than he wanted them back.
Dunk the lunk, thick as a castle wall,
he could hear the old man chiding.
So it was.
The prince with the broken nose smiled gently.
Tales grow in the telling, I know. Do not think ill of your old master, but it was 4 lances only, I fear.
Dunk was grateful that the hall was dim. He knew his ears were red.
My lord. No, that's wrong too. Your grace.
He fell to his knees and lowered his head.
As you say, 4. I meant no. I never. The old man, Sir Arlan, he used to say I was thick as a castle wall and as slow as an oryx.
I'm strong as an oryx by the look of you,
said Baelor Breakspear.
No harm was done, sir. Rise.
Dunk got to his feet, wondering if he should keep his head down, or if he was allowed to look a prince in the face.
I am speaking with Baelor Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, hand of the king, and heir apparent of the Iron Throne of Aegon the Conqueror. What could a hedge knight dare say to such a person? You gave him back his horse and armor, and took no ransom, I remember,
he stammered.
The old Sir Arlan, he told me that you were soul of chivalry, and that one day the 7 kingdoms would be safe in your hands.
Not for many a year, I still pray.
No,
said Dunk, horrified. He almost said,
I didn't mean that the king should die,
but stopped himself in time.
I am sorry, my lord. Your grace, I mean.
Belatedly, he recalled that the stocky man with the silver beard had addressed Prince Baelor as brother.
He is the blood of the dragon as well. Damn me for a fool.
He could only be Prince Maekar, the youngest of King Daeron's 4 sons. Prince Aerys was bookish, and Prince Rhaegal mad, meek, and sickly. Neither was like to cross half the realm to attend a tourney, but Maekar was said to be a redoubtable warrior in his own right, though ever in the shadow of his eldest brother.
You wish to enter the lists, is that it?
Asked Prince Baelor.
That decision rests with the master of the games, but I see no reason to deny you.
The steward inclined his head.
As you say, my lord.
Dunk tried to stammer out thanks, but Prince Maekar cut him off.
Very well, sir. You are grateful. Now be off with you.
You must forgive my noble brother, sir. 2 of his sons have gone astray on their way here, and he fears for them.
The spring rain has swollen many of the streams. Perhaps the princes are only delayed.
I did not come here to take counsel from a hedge knight.
Prince Maekar declared to his brother.
You may go, sir.
Prince Baelor told Dunk, not unkindly.
Yes, my lord.
He bowed and turned. But before he could get away, the prince called after him.
Sir, one more thing. You are not of Sir Arlan's blood?
Yes, my lord. No, I'm not.
The prince nodded at the battered shield Dunk carried and the winged chalice upon its face.
By law, only a true-born son is entitled to inherit a knight's arms. You must needs find a new device, sir, a sigil of your own.
I will. Thank you again, your grace. I will fight bravely, you'll see.
As bravely as Baelor Breakspear,
the old man would often say. The wine sellers and sausage makers were doing a brisk trade, and whores walked brazenly among the stalls and pavilions. Some were pretty enough, one red-haired girl in particular. He could not help staring at her breasts, the way they moved under her loose shift as she sauntered past. He thought of the silver in his pouch.
I could have her, if I liked. She'd like the clink of my coin well enough. I could take her back to my camp and have her, all night if I wanted.
He had never lain with a woman, and for all he knew he might die in his first tilt. Tourneys could be dangerous. But whores could be dangerous too. The old man had warned him of that.
She might rob me while I slept. And what would I do then?
When the red-haired girl glanced back over her shoulder at him, Dunk shook his head and walked away. He found Egg at the puppet show, sitting cross-legged on the ground with the hood of his cloak pulled all the way forward to hide his baldness. The boy had been afraid to enter the castle, which Dunk put down to equal parts shyness and shame.
He did not think himself worthy to mingle with the lords and ladies, let alone great princes.
It had been the same with him when he was little. The world beyond Flea Bottom had seemed as frightening as it was exciting.
Egg needs time, that's all.
For the present, it seemed kinder to give the lad a few coppers and let him enjoy himself among the stalls than to drag him along unwilling into the castle. This morning, the puppeteers were doing the tale of Florian and Jonquil. The fat Dornish woman was working Florian in his armor made of motley, while the tall girl held Jonquil's strings.
You are no knight,
she was saying as the puppet's mouth moved up and down.
I know you. You are Florian, the fool.
I am, my lady.
The other puppet answered, kneeling.
As great a fool as ever lived, and as great a knight as well.
A fool? And a knight? I have never heard of such a thing.
Sweet lady, all men are fools, and all men are knights, where women are concerned.
It was a good show, sad and sweet both, with a sprightly sword fight at the end and a nicely painted giant. When it was over, the fat woman went among the crowd to collect coins while the girl packed away the puppets. Dunk collected Egg and went up to her.
My lord,
she said, with a sideways glance and a half smile. She was a head shorter than he was, but still taller than any other girl he had ever seen.
That was good. I like how you make them move, Jonquil and the dragon and all. I saw a puppet show last year, but they moved all jerky. Yours are more smooth.
Thank you,
she told the boy politely. Dunk said,
Your figures are well carved too, the dragon especially. A fearsome beast. You make them yourselves?
She nodded.
My uncle does the carving. I paint them.
Could you paint something for me? I have coin to pay.
He slit the shield off his shoulder and turned it to show her.
I need to paint something over the chalice.
The girl glanced at the shield and then at him.
What would you want painted?
Dunk had not considered that. If not the old man's winged chalice, what? His head was empty.
Dunk the lunk, thick as a castle wall. I don't know. I'm not certain.
His ears were turning red, he realized miserably.
You must think me an utter fool.
She smiled.
All men are fools, and all men are knights.
What color paints do you have?
He asked, hoping that might give him an idea.
I can mix paints to make any color you want.
The old man's brown had always seemed drab to Dunk.
The field should be the color of sunset. The old man likes sunsets. And the device?
An elm tree. A big elm tree like the one by the pool, with a brown trunk and green branches.
Yes, that would serve. An elm tree, but with a shooting star above. Could you do that?
The girl nodded.
Give me the shield. I'll paint it this very night and have it back to you on the morrow.
Dunk handed it over.
I'm called Sir Duncan the Tall.
I'm Tansel. Tansel Too Tall, the boys used to call me.
You're not too tall.
Dunk blurted out.
You're just right for it.
He realized what he had been about to say, and blushed furiously.
For?
Said Tansel, cocking her head inquisitively.
Puppets.
He finished lamely. Thank you for listening to a Vassals of Kingsgrave full castle recording of George.R.R. Martin's A Hedge Knight, Part 1. Sir Duncan the Tall was played by Patrick, Sir Patrick the Tall on the forums. Egg was played by Michal, inkasrain on the forums. And Baelor Breakspear was played by Greg, claudiusthefool on the forums. Playing the voice of Sir Arlan, Sir Steffon Fossoway, and Lord Ashford, we have Zach, Alias on the forums. Playing Daeron the Drunkard and Sir Donnel of Duskendale, we have Matt, Varley on the forums. Playing Steely Pate and Sir Roland Craighall, we have Adam, Drowned Snow on the forums. Playing the Guard Captain, Master of Horse, and Prince Makar, we have Tanya, Silence on the forums. Playing Plumber the Steward and Sir Manfred Dondarian, we have Alex, Lucky Charms on the forums. Playing the Stable Boy and Tansel Too Tall, we have Casey, Blue-Eyed Queen on the forums. Playing Raymond Fossoway and the Dornish Puppeteer, we have Hannah, Shadow Baby on the forums. Playing Arian Targaryen, we have Dan, Witless Chum on the forums. And, as always, Amber Rocks on the forums, played the Inwall. I'm Paul, Sir Dineral on the forums, and I was your narrator for tonight. I hope you'll join us for part 2 of the Hedge Knight, whenever we get around to doing it.
We did it!
Yay!
Over! We did it!
Woo!
Oh, Lord.
Multiple fucks ups.
Yes.
Is this
Good luck editing.
I had...
I'll be watching.
Yeah,
I would have it out in like 3 hours.
Well, I have nothing tonight, so maybe.
Tanya, why did you insist on doing that outrageous accent for Prince Makar? You didn't want to go Scottish?
What? I don't.
You should have done French Prince Makar.
It's Prince Makar, don't you know?
I mean, we already have a southern gentleman as Lord Ashford.
Did we? Did I miss that part?
Yeah,
No.
Zach's Lord Ashford is from Georgia, apparently.
Welcome to my
Westworld.
luxurious
From
estate.
the south.
Well, I do declare, Lord Sir Duncan, you are the tallest knight I have ever seen.
Yeah, you're sure a tall drink of sarsaparilla.
So yeah, I'm already
Literally
speaking a
French
foreign
language.
language. I feel like it's gotta be enough.
Yeah, kudos,
Alright.
Patrick, because like
Count
I
it.
felt bad for you because English is A, not your native language, and then you had to do a fake accent on top of it, so...
Yeah, and read so much, and that was so much time.
Yeah, I mean, I
What
didn't...
he was signing up for.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect us to do 30 pages. I thought like 20, 15 is the norm. So
10.
5.
5 would have been perfect. Yeah, but
No, it wasn't that. But you did really well, Patrick. It's great.
Yeah, it was really
I know I did, but
Yeah, sure.
Alright, let's back off all the comments now.
It's too late. I didn't really expect us to do like a discussion for an after show, but I mean, we could
Come
just
on,
talk
so-
about our favorite things that happened this, like, things we like learned when we were like first reading this book.
I thought it was interesting. There's been some debate. Sorry. You want to go ahead first?
Oh, I had purchased the omnibus for the Duncan Egg Tales 2 years ago, but I had have not touched it, unfortunately. So this is my first time actually through the story. So this is very interesting.
Oh.
That'd be exciting.
You'd read them before, though, or you just hadn't read the new edition?
I've not read them at all, Greg.
Oh,
Wow.
Send
I'm
us-
sorry we're ruining this for you.
Alan,
A
Alan,
Duncan
any
egg
questions?
virgin.
I assume you read it before the recording, or was this literally your first read of it?
This is literally my first time.
Oh,
through.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Excellent.
So,
I thought I was bad, and I haven't read the Mystery Knight in full, but I've read the first two.
Well, we have homework for you.
We can just do all of it as podcast recordings, and you never have to actually read it.
Nobody's actually read the Mystery Knight.
I
Hey.
have.
the
I'm
Mystery
joking.
Night is one of my favorites.
Oh,
Yeah,
that,
I've
that
read it.
story where nothing happens.
And definitely
Yeah.
nobody's
Oh,
gay.
the Sworn Sword?
Right, guys? Nobody's gay.
Oh my God.
Nobody's gay.
I missed that.
Especially
the
not
first time.
Damon, sorry.
David?
Blood Raven is nowhere to be seen.
1,000 eyes and none.
Alright, so, Alex, impressions so far?
What's gonna happen?
It's very-
Predictions.
It's very charming and low key and enjoyable.
Yeah.
Zach was telling me how he thinks that structurally the Duncan Egg stories would make better movies.
Oh,
Is that right?
definitely.
Oh, yeah.
They're
And you see that a lot more in the second part.
they're like high adventure type stories and
Two of
I
them.
think it's
not as dark.
like, full of ripeness for TV show. Like if they're gonna do a spin-off, they should totally do them because there's
I'd-
so much to work with.
I'd
Yeah,
love
but you know
like
how
an-
disappointed people would be going from Game of Thrones, dragons and sex, and I mean there's some sex, but you know they would think it's boring compared to Game of Thrones. I know they
I mean,
Yeah,
But I
that's what
mean,
I was gonna say.
they could take it and run with it after Mystery Night.
But
'cause
I
he
wouldn't-
He hasn't written
Yeah,
anything.
but see, that's what I would not want. No more
Oh.
of that.
Don't need two things of work.
just want a nice quaint, HBO story.
well, I think I'd want
PBS
more.
could do the Duncan Egg.
Mystery Theater on Masterpiece.
Yeah.
Oh,
Masterpiece.
Sagrantum.
That's not strictly true. Like I read them to my son because he's, he knows I like all this Song of Ice and Fire stuff, and he always wants me to like read them to him. And I'm like, it's not appropriate. So I let him read the World book. Then I tried to read him these out loud, but there were like parts I had to skip over for him.
Well,
Still,
your
even
son
with
has never
these.
been with a whore?
Not yet. We're waiting.
When you're
till he
He's
turns
not
been
21.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind like seeing like a nice like little animated like series. I think those would be nice. As long as D&D don't touch them, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. A lot of people seem to debate in this whether or not Dunk actually was knighted. It seemed convincing to me just going through. It seems like he has a story. He talks about the bird in the trees and everything, and I just don't think Dunk is smart enough to come up with that as like a...
He remembers some of the words, but then later on...
Yeah, but
No,
puissant is
where
in his
is yours
vocabulary.
like
So
that?
There's no way he's knighted.
Oh, he's a genius.
Yeah. Why does he doubt himself the whole time? Just because he's low-born? If he was knighted,
Yeah, I
he'd
mean,
own that.
I
I
believe
just-
him that Sir Arlan was going to, but I don't think he ever got around.
But, like,
to
in
it.
the middle of the vows,
Fair
he
enough.
just killed it. Like, we know we were halfway there. It counts.
I just think he's generally nervous and awkward, so I can...
I thought that he genuinely had been knighted, but on later read-throughs, I kind of got the feeling that because there's no mention of it specifically, other than when he tells other people of it. Like,
Well, some of his
It does make
behavior
for a
later,
better story. Sorry, go ahead.
Some of his behavior later indicates, like, some of the things that he declines to do.
Like
indicate that-
Raymond
And it
Foster.
does make
Don't
for a better
spoil
story.
it. Don't spoil it for
No
Alex.
spoilers.
Right. That someone who is never knighted becomes the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
I mean, people.
Hello.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
well-
assume Alex has read
we've
the
got a
other
child
books,
around
though.
who's had
well,
the-
that doesn't necessarily.
well, then the TV show, they talked about it.
But that doesn't
That's
necessarily
the way she should've done it in.
indicate that he actually was knighted, does it? I mean, Brienne is not a knight either, but she acts like one.
But she's
I-
a knight.
I do like the idea that the only true knights who kind of show themselves in the story aren't actually knights, so
Right.
I like how it kind of keeps with that theme.
Yeah.
Well, like the more he talks about it in the other books without being spoilery, that totally to me said, no, definitely not a real knight. Because he kind of like starts to buy his own lie a little bit more and more. I felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I noticed it the first time that he was being really dodgy about it, so I always assumed that he had not really been knighted. Because, I mean, otherwise, why is George making it a thing?
Right, exactly.
If he hasn't been,
the way it's
if he
written.
really wasn't knighted.
I mean, but it could be one of those things where he wants you to come up with your own answer.
Well, I have my answer, so good job.
Yeah,
Mine own.
it's funny how he writes. You know, he'll tell you exactly what everyone was wearing and every scrap of food on the table, and then
Oh yeah, the capons. The
Pretty-
delicious
pretty big
capons.
ass information left
I
out.
like capons. I actually
was
do
the
think
bread.
that part in the tavern is like the most like mouth-watering part, where he's just eating the bread and stuff. God, sounds so good.
I just like
Do not
the
have bread.
description.
Bread's
I
pretty
love
easy
bread.
to come for. Come
I like
on.
bread.
No, bread is great, man.
Depends on how hungry you are while you're reading.
Can't live
Yeah.
without bread.
Can't. It's not possible.
Have to have my bread.
And I really like there get some good descriptions of like the tourney, because we don't see very many tourneys in a Game of Thrones, because like there's the tourney of the hand, but that's about it. And we see more of just kind of a gruesome side because the mountains involved with that one. But
You get the flashbacks and stuff.
yeah,
We have Arian in this one.
yeah, but what we get to see like kind of the atmosphere that the whole thing kind of brings with it, and it's all from like a small folks perspective, where you aren't like, oh, like you see the great lords, but you're also like, oh, there are the vendors and the bakers and the whores, and you see kind of more just the folk who go about the town more so than the actual knights themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other great thing about the Duncan Egg Tales, is that it is, from the small folks' perspective, and you really don't get that as much in the main books as maybe you should.
Yeah, because the Hedge Knight and the Sworn Sword are both great kind of insights to peasant life in the Seven Kingdoms.
Mm.
All the
Well,
plots.
also there's like a lot more like specific detail on how to do a joust and stuff like that. So that was like the meat and potatoes for me. The whole description on how to sit with your lance crossed over and stuff like that. I like that.
Yeah, it just adds that extra layer to a Game of Thrones when you're getting like a history of this, and it's kind of nice to see how the kingdoms are under Targaryen regime, because in the books we never really see that.
Yeah, you get to meet a nice Targaryen.
Yeah, you get to meet a Targaryen who doesn't look like a Targaryen, and then you get Targaryen Stannis.
Wait, that's a Maekar, I assume?
Yeah, Maekar is basically Targaryen Stannis.
Oh, yeah, I'll go with that.
Or more so, I suppose Stannis is Baratheon Maekar.
I'm pretty sure there were plenty of, like, grumpy princes over the years. They're not all just like Stannis, but I get it.
Well,
he's basically the same character.
Yeah, he's a younger sibling, feels outshined by others, even though he's pretty good in his own right, and you get to see that.
Maekar's not as funny as Stannis from what we see.
Not funny at all.
Because he doesn't have a Davos with him.
Yeah.
So it's just grumpy that
And
way.
one of his sons is a
Spoiled.
psychopath, and one is
One's drunk.
yeah.
Yeah.
He had a couple good ones.
Yeah.
They turned out alright.
Yeah, he doesn't have any babies in jars. Oh, sorry, that was just the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like giving these stories because so many people don't know about them still, especially a lot of the newer readers who've come like since the TV show. So people come in like, oh, when's the next book coming out? I was like, oh, well, have you read the stories? They're like, what stories? The stories? And then they get to go back a little bit.
At times, I'm just like, just a little part of me would be a lot more interested in how he finishes the Dunk and Egg series, more so than the actual Game of Thrones series, because...
Oh my god, I was
Yeah,
just
you say
gonna
that. You say that now.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, I've mostly gotten into it because I like the kind of more like political intrigue, the society, the thing. But now that we're getting up to the point where like, oh boy, there's going to be White Walker battles, I'm like, oh, that's not really what I came for. I came here for like feudal.
That is what it started with, if you recall.
Yeah, but like,
been warned.
It's only been there in the background, except if we're just reading John's, then it's like a really big deal. But I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I mean, would I rather have another book in the Song of Ice and Fire, or would I rather have another book in Dunk and Egg? And I think if it's just one more book of either, I would probably choose Dunk and Egg. But if it's like the conclusion of the whole story of the Song of Ice and Fire, I mean, I'm invested in that, getting all the answers. So conclusion of the stories, I already know how Dunk and Egg ends. So I'm more.
So you can fill in more of the gaps.
Yeah, I just want to fill out more of the gaps in
Really,
that story.
Finding out what happened at Summerhall is worth more to you than the fate of the Seven Kingdoms.
Oh no, that's what he's saying. It isn't.
Okay.
He's saying he's in it for the atmosphere, not for the end of it.
Yeah, because if you only get one more Ice and Fire book, it would never be finished, right?
Yeah. And then I would rather have a storyline where it actually has like it has meaning right now as it is.
I got
You don't really need more, but of course you want more in both series.
Aren't we under the impression that he pretty much wrote another story in this, but chose not to finish it yet? The She-Wolves of Winterfell. I don't know if it was finished 100%.
Apparently,
it was supposed to come out.
There's 10 that he. Yeah, apparently there's 10 that he would need to write apparently to get to the end. So I don't.
Well, but he like weren't they even
total.
like promoting like the She-Wolves of Winterfell at one point,
Yeah.
and then it just
I
dropped.
think that was more that we assumed that was going to be the story that was in that collection, and then it turned out to be the
Yeah, Dangerous Women.
Prince.
No, Dangerous Women anthology.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the She-Wolves, but ended up being.
I mean, he's probably got it somewhere, and maybe
Princess
he's just
Winter.
trying to maybe like hold it off for until he gets a couple of them, or
I don't
until
think
it's
he's written
finished.
it
I don't
yet.
know.
I don't think he's written it yet, or else they would have put it in the collection when it came out.
The wiki
Unless he doesn't want to.
The wiki entry for it is The She-Wolves of Winterfell is the working title given to the as yet unpublished fourth Tales of Dunk and Egg novella, once intended to be published in an anthology named Dangerous Woman, but now postponed. George R.R. Martin says he will not know more about when the story can be completed until he has finished Winds of Winter. So he's put a.
Well, I've
Hidden
been saying
that
it for years when
order of
Winter
that.
is coming out, in
Yeah.
June 2018, 17, I've been saying it since the beginning.
It's pretty sure
Yeah.
it's 2017. Pretty sure.
Winter is coming.
I'm pretty sure you never said it was 2016.
No, I'm joking. I've said the same thing every year. But changing
I'm
the
also
year.
joking.
Yeah.
I've stopped making predictions because I'm like, when it comes out, it'll come out, and then I'll
Yeah,
get.
me too. I mean, it makes sense for a few points in the next year, but
Yeah.
I won't say it out loud anymore. What I'm thinking.
Yeah, to go back to Dunk and Egg a little bit.
Yeah.
It always really strikes me with this one how he so obviously had not come up with the Blackfire Rebellion when he wrote it. Because, there's Dunk talking to Baelor Breakspear, whose, big achievement in life was beating Daemon Blackfire, and doesn't even think of it. Nobody says it. Nobody says anything.
Well,
It's really striking, and I almost think that, once George finishes everything, maybe he should go back and, George Lucas a few things in there about how, like, Dunk could not believe he met the man who had defeated Daemon Blackfire.
Well,
No one should ever George Lucas anything.
yeah. First off, this is fine the way it is. Second,
The Hedge Knight Special Edition. There's way more horrors in that.
oh good.
Special HD
explosions.
edition. Everything
Yeah.
in 4K and 3D.
Oh my god. But
I said
I-
that just
I
so
think
that
the
drive you guys
sizzles can
crazy.
really be polished in a special edition. You can make them look better.
I looked back at Dunk and Egg, and I realized what do the people want, and
So I put in multiple horrors and Blackfire references.
And I now know that the name Dunk is stupid, so I've changed it.
To Barnaby.
Also, Steely Pate isn't a hairy man. He's now a big slug creature. But you can see Dunk walk around him. And he steps
I didn't have the
tail.
technology to do that when I first wrote this.
Yep.
Did you have to make him an unfortunate ethnic caricature, though?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's how the characters are in this world.
Also, Also, now Dunk gets some catchphrases.
I have no idea what you people are talking about.
Star Wars.
I knew that.
Lannister's ghost.
Oh yeah, so Arlan comes back as his younger self.
Sir Arlan's ghost.
Oh, I think that's a Darth Vader reference, right? When they put the other guy in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it.
Or Anakin, actually, if you're completely specific about it.
We get 3 ghosts. At least the last time I saw Return of the Jedi, there was 3 ghosts. But who knows what's happening.
They've kept 3 ghosts, but they've just replaced the old Anakin with Hayden Christensen.
Which, perfectly makes sense, right?
Completely right.
Yeah.
Peter Krause out of any enduring legacy.
Yeah.
Not Peter Krause. Peter Krause? I think it was Peter Krause. Prowse. David Prowse. There we go.
Yeah, the guy that played the body of Darth Vader.
Yeah.
The body of Vader.
He's got a legacy. He was in, he's in, what's it,
Yeah, he's in that.
Anthony
He's got
Burgess.
that legacy that we don't. That thing he did that thing.
The Kubrick
Got
movie.
one of those.
Yeah.
I really think that it makes more sense.
Yes.
Makes more sense for Duncan's character that he does not hit first, and it's actually Arian that hits first.
Dang it.
Now we're beating a dead horse. Right
Yeah,
now.
but I just wanted it, and I was thinking of the situation where somebody hit first that then shouldn't hit first. So I've been brewing on this for 5 minutes now.
Yeah. Oh man. I liked this kind of addition with Baelor Breakspear because it kind of shows that not all Targaryens look like Targaryens, so you can get a Targaryen with just kind of normal looking features.
It's because half his blood is not Targaryen.
Yeah, would he be flame retardant also? Or?
Yeah, the seed is not strong with those people.
None of the Targaryens are flame retardant.
Yeah, definitely.
Or are they?
Magic!
Yeah, I think you should use
Only Daenerys once. That's it.
Nah, according to the TV show.
Yeah.
The what?
On who you ask.
That's right. Those people then.
Guys, shoot spoilers. Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
Well, I have to add to that. Isn't she also doesn't she sort of not get hurt when in the fighting pits?
No, I mean in the book she's got burns or something.
Yeah, I mean her hair gets
burns off, but that's not the same as her getting burned. Is it? I don't know. I don't remember that much, but I just felt like she was.
She burned her hand at one point, but I might be. I can't remember.
You're right. She does burn her hand. I think when she's on the mountain with Drogon. She's trying to eat his food. Pick up little scraps and stuff, and she burns her hand because the dragon has just cooked the meat.
Okay, well, shocking lack of knowledge. Dunk the lunk, think it's a castle wall.
That is one of my favorite phrases.
Have I mentioned the bread yet?
Yes, I mentioned that. There's always food in a George R.R. Martin book. Must always be.
I also like how Daeron is an asshole. When you kind of like the present Dondarrion.
Yeah, you kind of see.
They did that with a couple of lords. They kind of flipped them from what they are in the story we're used to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember who else. Because we see all these Of course, we still see evidence of the Bracken Blackwood kind of rivalry, even just in the tourney grounds with Sir Otho.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I forget we're not at the second half of the story yet.
No, we're not yet.
This would be the perfect thing for a Renaissance fair to do, to reenact this stuff.
To reenact the tourney of Ashford?
Yeah, add a Game of Thrones, Ren Fair Game of Thrones.
Puissant. The 7 champions of the King's Guard were the most... Damn that word. What was it? Puissant?
Puissant.
Puissant, alright.
Yeah.
It's puissant.
Puissant, sorry.
It's poisson.
Am I the only English major here?
Can you use it in a sentence?
No.
I majored in Spanish.
It's not helpful.
I'm German.
You probably speak better English than the rest of us combined, Tanya.
Yeah.
Doubt it. All right.
I speak English good.
I have an advanced proficiency certificate in Latin.
Oh,
Damn.
wow.
Random fun fact.
How's that dead language working out for you?
Well, can't order it.
Easy, Greg.
I was just clearing my throat. But I'm on Team Latin.
Greg will revive it soon enough.
Boy. Puissant. The 7 champions of the King's Guard were the most puissant... Did I say that? Alright, puissant?
You're good.
Michal?
Puissant? Why is
Okay.
your thing
Because
puissant?
I am an ignorant fool. That is why.
Alright. Come on.
It's better with an English accent.
Accepted.
Puissant.
Prince Valar has the honor of being one of Lady Ashford's champions. Oops. Damn it.
Oh my.
That's how you should have done it, man.
Oh, you don't want to know what my first choice was going to be. Anyway.
I wouldn't have been offended if you just needed to ask, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Puissant.
The rest of us have only come to watch.
That sounded a bit creepy. We've only come to...
Why does to watch sounded really creepy?
Come to watch.
Maybe.
Oh my.
Could you do that sentence again? 1 sec.
Exactly that way.
I liked it that way.
Puissant. Okay.
Let's take it from the top.
Okay.
top.
Back to the beginning.
More pervy, please.